Our bikes come mostly assembled, but some of the parts are zip tied to the frame. So you'll need a cutting tool, like these dikes, a pair of scissors, or something else to disconnect these zip ties. When you're doing this, be careful not to scratch the rim. You don't want to scratch your new bike. While I'm doing this, I'll take note that the wheel, once I disconnect all these zip ties, is going to come apart from the frame, and you'll want to support it. Just keep a hand on it, ready to catch it once you get this last zip tie clipped. Also connected to the frame is the handlebar. I'm going to take this wheel and the fender, which is loosely put on top, and put them aside. Then, careful not to scratch my new bike, I'm going to take this one last zip tie holding the handlebar and lower that as well. We have the front fender, the front wheel, the quick release or axle that goes through the front wheel, the handlebar and stem, which were zip tied to the frame, and your keys for your new bike should be zip tied to the handlebar here. This is also a good time to take a look at your frame and make sure that there are no scratches from shipping or any other marks or things missing. Also included is this box. This has your pedals, also all the tools you need to build the bike. So let's open up this box and get to work. Pedals, paperwork, and a little plug. Your charger, your headlight, and your tools. Next, I'm going to take off this protective cap and install the stem and the handlebar. This cap is secured with a 5mm Allen wrench. It shouldn't be too tight. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So I'm going to spin it to the left and take that bolt out. This cap you can throw away. You could use it for something else. It's not necessary. It was just for protection and shipping. Next, there is a little plug inside the steer tube. Looks like that one's an extra. I'll show you what that's for. This handlebar comes mounted in the stem already. So you're just going to slide that onto the steer tube, and with the same 5mm Allen wrench, turn this bolt into what we call the star nut. It shouldn't be too hard to turn, but you should notice that it starts to get tighter. And at this point, you're going to want to take note of the cables here. You may need to loosen the faceplate bolts of the stem a little bit so that you can turn the handlebar. They had the handlebar turned the other way for shipping. And now is when you're going to start seeing how the handlebar will be for you when you ride the bike. At this point, you're going to tighten these faceplate bolts, trying to get the handlebar centered. And you're going to slightly tighten this one and then go across diagonally and tighten this one. And do so with these bolts as well. And at this point, I'm going to leave these slightly loose as I'm going to adjust them for how I want them when I ride the bike once we get the wheel on. When putting the pedals on the bike, you can do it like this with the forks supporting the bike, or you can do it when the wheel is on later. I like to do it now by hand, and then we'll tighten it later with the wrench. The pedals are going to come marked right and left. If not with a sticker, then on the pedal body or on the spindle somewhere, there will be an R or an L. On a bike, the right-hand side is from the rider's perspective. If you're riding the bike, you're right. Or the drive side, where all the gears are. This right side is going to be normal threaded, so righty-tighty. The left pedal is going to be reverse threaded. So from your perspective, it's still going to go right if you're on this side of the bike. They do that to make it a little bit easy on you. I'm just going to tighten these by hand, and we'll finish them up with the wrench after we get the front wheel on. The bolt will come attached to the headlight and the reflector. Using your hands, you can take this nut off, and to put them in the bracket, I like to make a sandwich out of the reflector and the headlight. Pinch those two together, like so. And then we're going to slide these into the bracket on the horn. Then, once attached, you can plug your light in on the back. The plug only goes one way. And now we're ready to tighten with an 8mm wrench and a screwdriver. I'm holding the screw on this side with the screwdriver and turning the nut on this side. Your bike is almost ready to roll. Next, we're going to put the front wheel on. The tires should come somewhat aired up. The disc rotor is already bolted to the wheel, so it's a good idea not to touch this part where the brake pads would contact, but make sure that that rotor is tight. You're going to put the axle, or the quick release skewer, through the wheel with the lever on the disc rotor side. This is the lever. Then, you're going to put the spring on with the big part of the cone facing out and screw this on just a few turns. At this point, it's a good idea to test the wheel, spin these in the hub, and make sure they're not too tight or too loose, as that would require an adjustment from a bike shop. Next, you're going to remove a plastic spacer inside the brake caliper. And it's time to put that wheel in the bike. The disc rotor goes inside the brake, and the fork should rest. Maybe not. There it goes. All right. This is somewhat easier to do when the bike is upside down, but can certainly be done when the bike is upright. Next, you're going to hold this side, which is the nut of the skewer, and tighten the other side. Not all the way, but so that when you close this lever, it gets difficult about halfway up. And you want this tight enough that when you push on it, it makes an imprint in your hand. Next, we're going to tighten the cockpit, stem, and controls of the bike. At this point, if you tried to ride, it wouldn't work. We're about to fix that. So we're going to start with this bolt in the top of the steer tube. Make sure that that is pretty tight. You should feel no looseness here. Now make sure that these faceplate bolts on your stem are looking right down the middle of your tire and are pointing straight forward. Next, we're going to tighten these stem clamp bolts. Now these bolts get tightened quite a bit. Depending on the size of the length of your 5mm wrench, with this little one I have, I'm going to tighten them about as tight as I can make them. If your wrench is longer, you'll want to go a little less tight. And there's one of these on each side. At this point, it's good to mention that this stem is adjustable. You can adjust the angle of this stem up or down, and that is a 5mm bolt on the underside here. I like where this one's at, so I'm going to keep it there. Now that those are tight, take a look at the handlebar and pretend you're on your first ride on your bike. Does it look like it's in a good place? If so, then we're going to tighten these faceplate bolts on the stem. And we're going to go diagonally and tighten each one. Again, if you have a small wrench, these are pretty tight. If your wrench is longer, you have more leverage, don't go quite as tight. What you want is no rotation of the handlebar in that stem. You're almost ready to ride your new bike. First though, we need to tighten your pedals and do a couple other small finishing touches. Now the pedals, if you grab the spindles and back pedal the bike with the kickstand down, they should tighten. It helps to use a wrench on one side so that you can reach all the way. Once they feel pretty tight and you reach the point where they're all the way threaded, give them another good tug. At this point too, it's good to note the seat post adjustment. This quick release, when opened up, allows the seat post to come out. Seat posts have a minimum insertion point. You can tell by little scores, and it usually says minimum insertion. That means these are not supposed to be any further out than that line for the safety of the frame. You should also put a light coat of grease on the seat post if it's not already there. Now, we're going to make sure that the seat is pointing straight ahead. And similar to this quick release on the front wheel, you're going to tighten the nut on the other side so that when you close this lever, it leaves a little imprint in your hand. And the seat doesn't budge when you try to move it. Oh, I almost forgot. This little plug that came in the little bag is going to go right in the hole on top of your stem. Now, ready to power on your bike? And take it for a test ride.